What if I told you the world didn't get this way by accident? That every headline you read, every protest you see, every war you can't make sense of, has already happened before. Not exactly, but close enough to feel familiar. Empires don't just fall. They follow a rhythm. Leaders don't just rise. They ride waves that have crashed before. It's easy to believe we're living in a unique moment. But history whispers otherwise. When a superpower overreaches, when the rich get richer and the rest get angry, when people are told to forget, but memory refuses to die. That's not new. It's not a rerun. But it is a remix. Because history doesn't repeat itself. It just finds new verses to an old familiar song. And if you don't hear the rhyme yet, you will. What do we mean when we say history repeats? History repeats itself. We've all heard it. In classrooms, in articles, in angry political debates. But what do we really mean by that? Is it just a poetic phrase? Or something darker, like fate knocking on our door again? Most people imagine repetition as exact. One war leads to another. One economic crash triggers the next. One empire rises and falls, and then another takes its place. But history isn't a loop. It doesn't rewind. What it does is echo. Not with identical events, but with familiar rhythms. A fragile peace shattered by ambition. A democracy slowly strangled by fear. A revolution that starts with hope and ends with silence. We say history repeats because the patterns feel the same. Because when we see injustice, or division, or collapse, we think, didn't this happen before? And often it did, just not quite like this. Our minds search for meaning, for context, for lessons. Because if it is repeating, maybe we can stop it this time. But repetition doesn't come from destiny. It comes from forgetting. We repeat history not because we're doomed, but because we didn't learn what we were supposed to the first time. Patterns that keep coming back. Look closely at history, and you'll start to see the patterns. Not coincidences, not copy-paste events, but rhymes. Verses repeated across time. Take this one. A society grows wealthy. Its elite pull away from the rest. Politically, economically, even morally. Inequality grows. Anger simmers. And then, one spark. A protest. A bread riot. A police crackdown. And suddenly, everything the ruling class thought was permanent isn't. Sound familiar? You could be in ancient Rome during the Republic's collapse, or in France in 1789, with the storming of the Bastille, or in Tunisia in 2010, where one man's self-immolation ignited the Arab Spring. Different names, same pattern. Or this one. A powerful nation, flush with victory, becomes convinced of its invincibility. It spreads its influence, expands its borders, builds bases, allies, debts. And then one day, the weight of it all becomes too much. Ask Napoleon's France after it reached Moscow. Ask the British Empire when the sun finally set. Ask the Soviet Union after Afghanistan. Ask the United States after Vietnam, after Iraq, after... Well, that part's still being written. There's even a quieter pattern, less dramatic but just as dangerous. Forgetting. We forget how propaganda works, how fear can become policy, how democratic systems, when ignored, or weakened, or hijacked, can collapse into authoritarianism without firing a single bullet. Ask Germany in 1933. Ask Chile in 1973. Ask whoever comes next. History doesn't whisper these warnings, it shouts them. But only to those who are still listening. And maybe that's the scariest pattern of all. We keep closing our ears just when we need to hear the past the most. Why the past still matters. It's easy to think of history as something that's over. A collection of dusty facts, old wars, dead rulers. Something that happened to them, not us. But here's the truth. We don't live after history. We live inside of it. The borders you were born within. The language you speak. The passport you carry. The rights you do, or don't, have. None of those came out of nowhere. They were shaped by decisions made generations ago. By people you'll never meet, in rooms you'll never see, drawing lines on maps you've never touched. And the echoes of those choices, they're still landing. That's why the past matters. Because when a country goes to war today, chances are, it's finishing a fight that started decades ago. Because when a people demand freedom today, they're answering to chains that were forged long before they were born. Why is the Middle East scarred by conflict? Look at colonial borders, drawn in secret a century ago. Why does racial inequality persist in the US? Look at the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining. Why do Russia and NATO stand on the edge of confrontation? Look at the fall of the Berlin Wall, and what followed after. You can't understand the present without standing in the past. And history isn't just about power. It's about people. About the lives lived in the margins of empires. The voices lost in the chaos of revolutions. The families fractured by decisions made far above them. When we remember history, we're not just studying facts. We're witnessing the lives of those who came before us, and asking what they still have to teach us today. Because whether we like it or not, we're carrying their unfinished stories. A different kind of history channel. There are plenty of history channels out there, and many of them are great. They'll teach you who ruled when, which empire conquered what, and how the world used to be. But this channel, we're not here to recite names and dates. We're here to ask why those names still matter, why those dates keep echoing in the headlines. Because the past isn't over. It's hiding in plain sight, in the laws we live under, in the flags we raise, in the stories we tell, and the ones we bury. This isn't about glorifying history. It's about confronting it, understanding it, and connecting it directly to what we're living through now. We'll look at revolutions and resistance, at borders and broken promises, at conflicts that never really ended, just went quiet for a while. We'll explore why empires fall, why people fight, and why the same mistakes keep showing up with new names. And through it all, we'll keep asking, how did we get here? And what might come next? Because if we can trace the line from past to present, maybe we can shape the line from present to future. So no, history doesn't repeat itself. It doesn't move in circles. It moves like a current, sometimes slow, sometimes violent, but always forward. And along the way, it leaves patterns. Patterns of power and pride, of collapse and resistance, of voices that rose, and voices that were silenced. If we learn to recognize those patterns, we don't just understand the past better. We understand ourselves better. Because the questions we keep asking about justice, war, freedom, fear aren't new. They've been asked before, fought over before, and answered again and again by people who thought they were living in a brand new era. Sound familiar? You're not just living through history. You're shaped by it. You're standing at the edge of decisions that future generations will study. You are the next rhyme. So if you're ready to hear the echoes, if you're ready to explore the stories that shaped our world, and maybe shape a different one moving forward, hit that subscribe button. Because this is more than a history channel. This is where history meets now, where headlines have backstories, and the past finally makes sense. If that sounds like a journey worth taking, hit subscribe, and let's begin.